Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. Today's guest is a big reason why the Perfect Bite even exists today. She helped me find a career working alongside folks in food and bev when I was a little lost leaving my own startup, which she also was incredibly supportive of. And that's really what her job is today, supporting entrepreneurs in the F&B industry through a platform you can buy all their delicious products in one spot. Please welcome today's guest, CEO and founder of Here Market, Disha Gulati.
Hello. Hi, Sarah. Oh my goodness, that introduction.
Hi,
You're going to make me cry.
30 seconds in. Might be a new record.
I know.
Let's do it. But it's all true. It's all true. You and I have known each other for, I believe it's been almost 8 years.
Oh my goodness, that long?
Yeah.
That's
I got one of
insane.
those reminders the other day on Facebook about when my old startup launched in the same space that you're recording in.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Nuts.
crazy. I know.
But no one wants my story. We're here for your story today.
Yeah. You know, I truly believe I say this as a mom, but I also say this as a startup founder. The days are long, but the years are short. And I can't believe it's been 8 years since I have been on this journey. But it really does feel like just yesterday when we met here in the space.
I can't believe it. And you're in Chicago. You're in a startup space that has been iconic called 1871. It's
That's right.
named after the year that the Chicago fire happened because our city, again, doesn't matter where I move, I will always call it our city, is known for just rebuilding and pulling ourselves back up again after something hard and just keep going. And so I love that that is such an entrepreneurial spirit you definitely find in the Midwest, and you definitely have that spirit.
Thank you.
So I always love to take it back a little bit here at the
Mhm.
beginning. Tell us when you first fell in love with food and what were some of those favorite foods as a kid?
So I don't think there is one memory where, I looked at a plate and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I come from a foodie family. So my dad's published 5 cookbooks. A bunch of my uncles have been owner operators of restaurants along the way. So I remember playing in restaurant backyards, kitchens while dad helped in the kitchen and mom was at the register, or going with dad on these photography sessions for his cookbooks. So food is our world. We were the family who talked about what we're having for dinner at breakfast. And at dinner, we talked about what was for lunch the next day. So food has always had main character energy in my life. I grew up in Dubai as an expat. So very early on, I was exposed to many, many genres of food, not only because dad loved to cook and experiment with new things at home, but that's kind of the expat culture one tends to grow up in when they grow up in the Middle East, at least, right? So it was a very big melting pot of flavors. And I think that's where I built my sense of adventure with food. No cuisine was too out there. Everything we tried, we ate. It was like, yeah, this is food. This is just another restaurant. Of course, we're going to go and experience the culture through this lens of food. What was my comfort food? And I think this might be a very Dubai thing. And you can ask at least a bunch of kids like me who grew up in the 90s in Dubai. Our comfort food was shawarmas and manakishas. So Dubai was littered, and it still is littered with these small shawarma cafes where they had the spits out, and the spits are usually out on like street facing. And the shawarma was 2 dirhams and 30 cents when I was growing up, it's like less than $1. And no matter where mom sent you on an errand, you had the extra 2 dirhams and 50 cents to get your chicken shawarma on the way home because no matter where you went, there was a shawarma shop that you could grab that sandwich from. So my comfort food to date is a really good shawarma or a manakish.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so good right now. And are you a garlic sauce fan at all? I know you love some spicy.
Girl, I'm Indian. The more garlic, the better. Always. That's the answer.
This is also why we're friends.
Yeah.
I always need more garlic on anything. And I'm so envious that that's the way you were introduced to food growing up. Again, you knew my background, just like very Midwestern, and fell in love with different types of food later in life. So, talk to us about Papa Gulati's cookbooks here. What are some of them? Can we still buy them?
I don't know. Last I checked, they were on Amazon, and it's Papa Puri because it was before I got married.
Thank you.
And he was called the super Indian cook in Dubai. And honestly, this is the best story and the quintessential kind of parental story to tell. Is dad always loved to cook. It was always a hobby. But when I came to school in the US, so I came to Indiana, my brother went to USC, we would literally call him every other day and we'd be like, okay, how do you make this stew? How do you make this dal? How do you make ABCD? And he was so tired of just giving us the recipes that he started to type them out. And the more he put together, the more it started to come together. And his publisher friends were like, what are you doing? Why don't you just write a book? And so truly his first super Indian cookbook is a selection of very easy 10 steps or less Indian foods that basically we were making as freshmen here in the United States based on what we remembered and what dad was telling us over the phone. And remember, there was no FaceTime, no video chatting then. So describing how a dish was coming together on the phone was quite the feat. But dad was always so patient. He always hung around and he's like, tell me more. Is the water dried up? Is it soft now? So that gave us not just like this bar of like what good food tasted like, but the patience and the smells of something new cooking on a Friday afternoon in Dubai, because Friday is when, you got the day off, is what I relate to food. So food is not just something exciting, but food is also comfort and home for us.
I was going to say a sense of home for you, even though you were thousands of miles away in little Bloomington, Indiana.
I
I'm
know.
sure with the Super Indian Cookbook, then you became very popular on campus.
Yeah. I mean, just because I had the book doesn't mean I have the skills.
I don't believe that. I don't.
I'm still working on the skills. And again, what's funny is you always remember how your parents cooked it. And so it's never good enough. But it was helpful because coming back to Bloomington, Indiana, like the heart of the Midwest in the early 2000s, there weren't a lot of Indian options to choose from as there are today. So the book definitely came in handy.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit more post college. What was your career journey like? How did food and tech start to really come together here for you?
Yeah, I have had a very kind of traditional career path, so to say, up until here market. Graduated from Indiana, went to work for Discovery Financial, did that for a couple of years. And I had a bunch of friends who were consultants and crisscrossing the country and the globe. And I was like, that looks like it's more fun. So decided to join a management consulting firm, spent close to 10 years at Deloitte, working on with a variety of different clients in a variety of different industries. CPG happened to be one of the industries that I worked in, always focused on data and analytics. Got headhunted by a company called Mondelez, which is one of the larger CPG companies in the world. They own brands like Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy, Cadbury outside of the United States, Sour Patch Kids, you name it. If it's a sweet tasting treat, they likely own it. And so went in the industry and led global analytics for Mondelez. And that's where truly I experienced the intersection of technology and food. However, I was experiencing that intersection at a million foot level, right? Working for a 30 plus billion dollar company having oversight in terms of data and analytics for hundreds and hundreds of brands across the world. But what I started to see was this, I would say, this crop of ankle biters in the market where emerging food and beverage brands were cropping up, not big enough for a company like Mondelez to be truly threatened by them. And again, this was the late 2010s, but interesting for us to take notice and see what was happening. And honestly, Sarah, what I was finding super interesting was how they were using data to build relationships, first party relationships with their customers, and truly harvest the shopper insights to strategically grow their brands in certain unique segments.
Mhm.
And of course, at some level, Mondelez was also doing that. But, when you're working with billion-dollar brands like Oreo cookies, it's very hard to like overnight turn the ship, right? And mind you, they don't need to turn the ship overnight, right? If these are big brands, it's taken a lot to get them there, right? But we were seeing all of this innovation, not just in the actual product, but innovation in their go to market strategies that was happening that was truly intriguing to me. And that is what I wanted to press on further.
Mm. And so, what was that aha moment when, again, you're at a $30 billion plus company?
Yeah.
Like you said, you are in an amazing leadership role, but again, there are a lot of hoops to jump through if you want to have change and get something new done. Or maybe it's bring on a new brand from, I like ankle biters as a phrase here.
Yeah.
What was that moment that you thought maybe it's time to do something new and strike out on your own and see if you can explore some of these curiosities a little bit more?
Yeah. Honestly, there wasn't like one day I woke up and I'm like, I have it. There's a gap in the market and I must go explore this. And I can't sleep at night because there's this like unexplored white space just waiting for me. Right. So it was none of that. It wasn't as dramatic or as romantic. I think I always held a candle for entrepreneurship and building something that was mine from idea to fruition. And I think with Mondelez, I was personally at a point in my career where I was ready to try something new. And personally, I had between Deloitte and Mondelez, I'd gone back to school, gotten my MBA at both, and majored in entrepreneurship. So always held this candle, lit it right as I went back to school, learned a whole lot more about what it meant to be an entrepreneur and start a company and all of those things. Did nothing with it for a few years because, like you said, I was on this path. It was a good path.
Yeah.
But after a few years in the industry, I just felt like I was at this point where I had the tools professionally to go out and try something. I had consulting experience, corporate experience, and MBA. I'd worked with a variety of Fortune 100 companies. And personally, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but personally, from a family perspective, we felt like we were at a good place where I could invest the next 12 to 24 months to explore and perhaps find something that would be more fulfilling
Yeah.
in terms of what I wanted to do in life. So that is how I took the plunge. I actually didn't know what I was going to do till I took the plunge and created some space and time in my life to truly go out and explore what it would be like to A, start a company, B, what would we do in this company, and C, how would I leverage the skills that I had personally built to fast track whatever idea we wanted to work on.
Yeah. And what was that time period, would you say, from one, taking the plunge again? Amazing when you also have a partner who's supportive and saying, yes, go do it. This is your time. This is the time that you really can do something on your own and something special here. Two, what became here. And let's talk through the different iterations too, as well. So let's start with that timeline.
Yeah. So Best laid plans, by the way. Professionally, personally, you know the story, but let me share it one more time. You know, left Mondelez. It was just my husband and I. Felt like it was the right time to start a company. Financially, we were prepared. I had the time, the focus. 2 months after we founded Here Market, I found out I was pregnant with our son. So again, I mean, amazing, but the timing was just something else to start a company.
Two babies.
Yeah, two babies,
Two
and I wasn't
babies.
ready for twins, right? But nonetheless, we forged on ahead. And this was late 2019. And so we started Here Market, found out I was pregnant. And oh, by the way, we were actually working on a completely different business problem to solve, right?
Yep.
And when we decided to do Here Market, we actually wanted to help restaurants with the problem of group dining. So everything from discovering the right restaurant for your group to making reservations and then splitting the check if you may. And even to this day, that problem hasn't truly been solved for. If
No.
you want to make a reservation for more than 6 people, it's always call the restaurant and then someone calls you back. They don't call you back. It's so analog today. It's like Resi or Open Table doesn't even exist for group reservations. That's the
Still
problem.
quite a
Yeah,
pain.
still quite a pain, but that was the problem we wanted to solve. We launched our pilot in February of 2020. I also had Vihan in February of 2020. We had some pilot restaurants that wanted to try out the solution. So the plan was I handed this over to one of our board members and I said, hey, I'm going to take a 3-month maternity leave as one must. And you run the pilot through with these pilot restaurants. And when I come back, we'll have some market insight to truly build out our beta version. Of course, in March of 2020, the pandemic hit. No one's ever heard of this. I think I was like 25 days postpartum, and I get a call from our board member, and he's like, hey, so the restaurants have shut down. Group dining actually, I believe, is illegal. What would you like to do next? And I just was like, this is unreal. Like, how can this be happening? But it was. And it was kind of a day at a time for all of us because no one knew at first. I was in shock and denial. And then I was like, restaurants can be closed forever. They're going to be
Right.
closed for a week, maybe, right? Like, who's ever heard of such a thing? And the week quickly became a month, and the month started to extend on to month. But from that came something really beautiful and interesting. A problem I don't believe if we had gone out and done the market research, we would have put our fingers on. Because we had, Sarah, all these pilot restaurants and chefs that we were working with, all of them were trying to figure out in this time of need what to do next and how to diversify their revenue streams with the dining room doors closed.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, if you recall, started to make product and do virtual events. I'll be honest, I don't know if I ever want to do a Zoom birthday party again, but I do want to take home my favorite pasta sauce from my favorite Italian restaurant in Chicago. I do want to take home the spice rub that my favorite barbecue restaurant uses. Right. And so from there came this idea of restaurant to retail, which was why should this be a temporary fix for our hospitality industry? Why shouldn't restaurateurs and chefs have the tools and a playbook to build product and take it to market? And if you think about them diversifying their revenue stream, what a natural way to bottle up their magic and sell it to their fans, their patrons, their diners, right?
Yeah.
And what a good use of their brand equity that they've built in their restaurants. And I say this to especially our restaurant creators a lot. Imagine if you will, because they're like, oh, do I have the time? I run this restaurant. Can I build this product? I'm like, imagine if you will, they take home your spice rub and they might come see you once a month, once every 6 months, depending on where they live and what the restaurant is. But every day when they open their pantry, they're going to remember you if they have a product in there. So if
It's
nothing
genius.
else, it's a way of creating some brand recognition and keeping you top of mind with your favorite diner.
I was going to say, like, you created that moment and that ability to brand yourself further as a chef or as a food creator that used to only be available to folks who, say, had a TV deal or book deals, the Ina Gartens of the world, or when Charlie Trotter had Trotters to Go and other products and stores. And it was because they were the quote unquote celebrity chefs.
Yep.
But you finally gave that moment to chefs that might not have a big profile, but are ready to meet folks at home with the taste of the restaurant.
Honestly, that is the biggest kind of gap or the chasm that these chefs needed to cross. Like today, they're building these amazing flavors, amazing products, but they're chefs and know the hospitality business. They don't know the CPG or retail business. So when you're in Ina Garten, you have a team around you or Charlie Trotter. But when you are my favorite Italian restaurant in my neighborhood, you have nothing. It's just you. And the journey seems really daunting, in fact, impossible. So to give you an example, we've been working with a chef here in Chicago for the last number of years. I think he had his products on our platform before he even had a restaurant. And today he has three, right? So we've been on this journey together. And recently he's been on a TV show. So he's now starting to build a national kind of following. And so, what better way to connect with your national fans than through your products that they're also seeing you use or make in these TV shows, right? Because not everybody is going to come to Chicago to try one of these restaurants, but when they do, because they have the products, they understand the flavor profile, they are more likely to seek the restaurant out and seek him out, as opposed to if they had built no personal connection without these products. This is just one use case. There's so many other use cases, but it's amazing to watch when these rising stars start to fit the pieces together between their physical brands like restaurants and then their products. You can then be a national brand. And we talk a lot
Yes.
about restaurants. The chefs in restaurants now on Here Market only comprise of 30% of our total number of brands. We work a lot with artisans making small batch products. Examples would be olive oils that are single origin olive oils that have a limited batch quantity every year, right? But they're just these phenomenal products that we want to showcase. All the way to emerging CPG brands, oftentimes we might be their first retail channel, if not in their top 10 as they get out the gate. So from that journey in 2020, where we were working with 5 chefs, now we work with over 300 brands.
Just so proud of you. So proud I got to be part of even a slice of the journey. Let's talk about 5 years ago when you were first building this, when you first said, okay, we're going to pivot completely, which I believe has been your superpower
Yeah.
throughout this entire journey. But also, building marketplaces is hard. It's two-sided in this case. You've got the folks who would end up buying the product, and you have to convince someone with a totally new platform and business that they should trust you to find an audience for them. Talk to us about what sourcing was like in those days versus now, and any tips that you might have for someone looking to build something in that space as well.
Yeah, like you said, a two-sided marketplace is hard to build. It's twice as hard to build. And we certainly ran into all the familiar problems that typically come with marketplaces, like the cold start problem. Do you start with the supply or do you start with the demand? And the unit economics of it all. Who's paying on this marketplace? Is it the supplier? Is it the consumer? And then truly the power of a marketplace is when there is liquidity on the marketplace, meaning there's enough shoppers and enough creators. That's when you have achieved peak utilization of the platform. So we have run into all of these problems. And I don't know if I have the right answers, but I will tell you what we did. When it came to the supply and demand side, we focused on the supply side, right? So we started with our focus on chefs and artisans and emerging CPG brands. As luck would have it, and honestly, sometimes you make decisions and in retrospect, they seem really smart, but in the moment, it just felt like the obvious choice without being totally backed by data. But as luck would have it, we started with chefs. Now, all chefs are micro or macro influencers in their own rights. When we brought chefs on, they brought their fans on to the marketplace. And that is what initially helped us build the marketplace. And it wasn't just chefs, although I would say chefs probably have the most influence, generally speaking, on their followers. And if you can imagine, if you're following a chef, you're likely a foodie, right? So you're open to more of these experiences. But as we started to bring on artisans who had local followings as well in their favorite farmers market or their specialty stores, they brought eyeballs onto the platform as well. And honestly, they were all foodies. They were all what we call early adopters of food. And we got the opportunity to cross pollinate these audiences across our set of creators or brands, if you may, which created the initial set of shoppers and creators. Now, if you think about the flywheel, if we brought on more creators, they brought on more eyeballs. We brought on more eyeballs. More creators wanted to be a part of the platform, which then brought on more eyeballs. And that's how we created the flywheel for the marketplace.
Which is so smart. And sometimes it just takes a lot more time than you think it will. And then, like you said, it's almost like this thing just switches. And suddenly you're not sourcing as often, they're coming to you, which is the best problem to have.
That's right. So in the beginning, we had to work the phones. I would say it was the hardest to get our first 20 creators. But what worked for us was we were in a pandemic. I mean, what else was going on with them?
Yeah,
Right?
it's very true.
They were more willing to take the risk to work with us than they would have been now when things are back in full bloom. So that worked in our favor. Once we were past the 20 threshold, honestly, like I said, the flywheel started to work and it got better and faster. And to date, we will do some reach outs for brands that we think are interesting and a good fit for here market. But to date, all of the creators that we have on the platform, 300 plus, like I was saying, that represent over 900 SKUs have been inbound requests to be on the platform.
Just incredible. And what do you think about here differentiates you? We can get into this a little bit further too later on, but from another platform that they might go to. So folks probably think of, well, why aren't they on Amazon or Etsy or some of these other spots?
Yeah, there's a couple of different reasons why they're on our platform versus somewhere else. So interestingly enough, when we were thinking of starting this marketplace, I really thought about it and I said, does the world need another marketplace? There's so many out there. You named the most popular one of those, Amazon and Etsy. It turns out Etsy actually isn't as big in the food category as it is in other categories because Etsy has this DIY reputation. So when people think of food, they think that it's being made in someone's kitchen, which is obviously not the case, but Etsy has that reputation. So for our emerging creators that we talked to them, that wasn't the right home for them. And to be honest, Amazon is cost prohibitive for early stage brands. And it's very pay to play. So it's not
Mm.
just about having your listing out on there, right? How do you appear in the searches and things like that? It's very pay to play. So in that sense, we were building a marketplace that was focused on a very specific category, which was food and bev. We were curating the brands we thought were interesting, had an authentic story. So it wasn't, again, a graveyard of like aspirational brands and we can go into that, right? But today, every creator that we bring on, I have the first conversation with, we try every product. It is very important for us to represent quality and authentic stories on the platform. And again, if you're a early adopter of food and flavors, there wasn't really a convening platform where these shoppers who were looking for something that was not available in their grocery stores and creators who were looking for a specific type of audience could meet, communicate, and build communal relationships with, right? And that is the white space we decided to enter. Now, that was close to 4 years ago. Since then, what we have also learned is that it's not enough to just build the platform where our shoppers and our traders are convening. That's step one, right? Exposure. Step two is to give our creators some data driven insights so that not only can they build their brand, but they can profitably scale their brand and increase their probability of success. Because what I learned is a lot of these little brands make a ton of very important decisions around costing and promotions and campaigns based on their gut and who they think their audiences are and what they think their pricing should be versus what the data and the analytics is telling us.
I love how that's bringing back your learnings from Mondelez, but
That's
into
right.
that smaller scale and say, well, one, these brands and creators, we love that they have a little bit more of an interesting story behind them
Yeah.
that you can really connect with. You understand the flavors and the ingredients going into them, and you can trust them. But I love that you're supporting folks, not just from a, okay, here you're out, here's another spot to buy it, but that next level. It's almost like a virtual version of an accelerator or an incubator for these folks to say, hey, I can actually learn how to do my business better. And it might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but here are all these tools that are built in for me. So, what is that like now for a creator these days when they say log on and look at their portal?
Yeah. So I like to think of Share Market, and I say this to every creator that I talk to, is think of this platform as your commercial sandbox. It is
Mm,
probably the first commercial sandbox that you have access to, where not only are you selling your products and building these relationships with your first 1,000 customers, for example, you also have the opportunity to test and learn pricing, test and learn positioning, test and learn packaging, right? Put it out there, change a few factors, see what happens, learn from that, and move on. So, the example to give you is one of our creators got onto our platform 3 years ago with this amazing product. Let's call it a chili oil, right? The chili oil out the gate was doing really well. And 6 months in, the creator came to us and they said, you know, the chili oil is doing really well. I'm looking at all the other chili oils that are in your marketplace, and we feel like we're underpriced. And I said, I think you might be right, but there's only one way to test it. Let's switch pricing and see what happens. So we ran this test over the next couple of months to see if we switched pricing, if we went up by $1, would demand be impacted? And it turned out that demand wasn't impacted, and more importantly, repurchase wasn't impacted. So we came back and we said, actually, there's room to grow. You can increase your pricing. The same creator that we were working with, we started to build a review profile. Remember building your first 1,000 customers, which is critical to build your community of early adopters, because these are the people who are not only invested in you and will give you feedback, but these are your evangelists. These are the people who are going to stand on top of a building and scream about your product and give it as gifts to other people and bring it to dinner parties and cook with it and so on and so forth, right? And we started to get feedback on this product that it was too spicy for a lot of people. It was a great product, but it was too spicy, right? So that is when she introduced a milder version. And now that's in the market, and we're starting to see how that as a SKU is trending. So all of these decisions were made on, and I would say like forward momentum decisions have been made on insights and the analytics that we've been collecting on the platform.
That is so brilliant because instead of, say, again, when I think of a food creator or a chef, at the end of the day, they're an artist, right? They have very artistic souls. So you could tell someone, I think it's too spicy, and they could go, oh, screw you.
Yeah.
You just can't handle, you just
I've
can't
had
handle
that.
it.
I've heard that. It's like, I'm not going to compromise the authenticity of my
Yes.
product. But, when the shopper speaks with their wallet, you tend to listen. And that's the channel we're opening up for them.
And I think it's cool because then they can learn how to balance both sides of the brain, which is how you win.
Yep.
So I want to talk about some of those wins that you've seen throughout the years. I know we're not going to make you choose a baby here. We're not going to say who are your favorite products or creators, but you had a really special partnership that came during this time. And anyone who is related to food and bev and hospitality knows that when the James Beard Foundation comes knocking, you answer and you say whatever you want. So tell us how you first got connected with them and the products and sets that came out of that.
Yeah. So I actually have to thank to Chicago, which is Chicago's arm of tourism and conferences, I believe.
Hmm.
And they, as the city of Chicago, has been hosting the James Beard Awards for the past so many years. And so 2 years ago, they came to us and they said, hey, we're hosting the awards again this year. And it seems like you've aggregated an interesting roster of award winning chefs on your platform. Is there something we could do together to kind of represent, showcase the chefs in the city while the awards were going on? And at the time, we came up with this, we think an amazing idea, which was we looked through our roster of local Chicago chefs, and so many of them were James Beard nominated. And we said, what if we created a James Beard deluxe gift box, right? Which truly showcased products from these award winning mines and restaurants in Chicago. And that was just the beginning. We did that the first year when we did the awards. I want to say that was 3 years ago when we did the
Yeah.
awards. We launched the James Beard box. And Sarah, you remember you and I got into a car and we went to all of these influencers and we gave the James Beard box so that they could talk about it, write about it. And our efforts paid off in spades because next year the foundation came back and presented us with an opportunity to be the official snacking sponsors for the actual freaking awards, which was, I think, one of the highlights of Here Market, right? So we went out there and two of our chefs who were James Beard award winning and had products on the platform is the snack pack we created for the actual awards, which was, what was it, 3,000 of the food and hospitality's who's who, the media, the chefs, the celebrities, everyone was there. We had the event at the Lyric Opera, and everybody had a Here Market snack box with snacks from James Beard nominated chef. It was truly, I mean, you were there. It was truly one of the bigger highlights of what we've done with the platform.
It was just incredible. Two stories with that. I mean, one, so just talking about 2 years ago when it was those thousands of gift bags we were filling.
Yeah,
You and I.
yeah, you and I.
And we're on our hands and knees in that beautiful hall as you go into the Lyric Opera building of Chicago, which is iconic in itself. And we're sweating and stuffing these snack bags. And every now and then peeking into the theater itself, where we're watching the presenters start to practice, which was incredible. And I just remember this moment during the packing. I look over, and that year, Gail Simmons, the beautiful, iconic, stylish, very accomplished Gail Simmons with Andrew Zimmern, they're practicing their essentially like promos that I think they were putting out on social media that day. Walk towards us down the hall, Gail. And I was like, we are feet from Gail. And I have never looked uglier. And that was not the moment, but we are manifesting that she'll come on this pod one day because she is one of those women in this space that we all just look up to.
Oh my goodness.
And her story's so cool too. So that was one funny moment, which is again, the example as well of like, you just got to put in the grit and it doesn't matter. You pull it off, you put it together.
Yeah.
The other celebrity moment we had was 3 years ago. So this is the after party of the James Beard Awards. Disha goes, she's looking gorgeous. And our colleague, who is an amazing brand strategist out of Chicago, Carly Connolly, hi. The three of us go to the after party. And this was the chance you can really get some of the bites at the booths and some drinks, but also it's really important for networking. And so we're rubbing shoulders with folks who have got their medals on their necks. Gregory Gourdet was walking around he was in this pink Gucci suit, and I'll never forget it. He looked so cool. And this is the summer the bear launched. And
Yeah.
so lo and behold, on the cusp of superstardom, but not quite yet, Jeremy Allen White's walking around the party with his
Yep.
publicist, just cool as a cucumber. He was incredibly nice. He was a little quiet, actually. And you were so excited because you had watched Shameless and I had not. So
Yeah.
we actually spent time with him and it was really cool.
Yeah. Those were my best pictures from all of the James Beard Awards I've attended. Let me tell you.
I'm telling you. And like now he's out here in his Calvins and we had no idea.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that, yes. Highlight of the party was Jeremy Allen White. Let me tell you. Maybe we can share the selfie with the show notes here because
I think I would love that actually.
it's my prized possession.
Listen, I think that it's important to treat people like people and to not be afraid, except for, again, Gail, not when you're feeling ugly.
Sarah, you were glowing.
Thanks. I was sweating.
Yeah.
But I have to say that those might have been some of the more glamorous and funny times, but it was all because we were putting hard work into something that you now continue to build and just turn into something just really special that is helping push people forward. So I'm glad that folks get to hear our little moments that we had with a couple of glasses of Moet there. So I want to talk about some of those challenges that you've had over the years. You know, that it's not all glasses of Moet Hennessy and hanging out with celebrity chefs and things along those lines. It's tough work. So share with folks, what are some of those hardest moments that you feel like you overcame and are able to still be here today?
Oh, where do I start there? If anyone's ever built a company from scratch, it's a roller coaster, right? The highs are high and the lows are low.
Yeah.
And you have to remember the highs when you're in your low times. And for me, I have learned in the last 4.5 years that no low is so low that you cannot overcome it. That has helped readjust my mental state of mind because in the beginning, it was, oh my God, we're one bad decision away from us shutting down shop. And I don't think that way anymore. We have 300 brands that we have to answer to, that we're rooting for, that we're supporting. So it has to be something catastrophic that'll truly wipe us out. So when you put that into perspective, I think the lows are just kind of little divots in the journey. But we've had so many. Prior to starting this company, for example, I never fundraised. And when we did our first round back in 2023, it was an interesting time. We were coming out of the pandemic, things were readjusting. There wasn't as much dry powder in the market, although that's how it felt in 2023. And now it feels even worse. But it was tough. We had conversations with over 100 investors to get less than 10 checks in. And that was quite the journey we went on because everyone has an opinion. I personally heard things, everything from like, this is the worst idea in the world, you should go get a job, to, oh, if this idea goes anywhere, we can replicate it overnight, or one of my portfolio companies can replicate it overnight. So you should not be doing this. All the way to, this is a good idea, but if you actually took it and completely went 180 with it, it would be better. And you're getting so much feedback in a compressed 90 to 120 day period is hard while you're still running a company, leading a team, watching your cash flow draw down. So I would say those 6 months, 7 months when we fundraise were some of the lowest of the lows because you question everything. Right. But I'd like to think I've come out of that as a stronger leader and somebody who has leaned in more into our mission and feel more confident about the problem that we're trying to solve for than ever before.
Yeah. And when you're getting that type of feedback from folks who most of them haven't even started companies themselves,
Yeah.
they're just looking at like market data and trends and they're saying, oh, this is what I predict. They're on that other side of the wall in a lot of ways. And you're trying to create a marriage that is hopefully long lasting and that is beneficial for both sides. But even though you're talking business, it can just feel so personal.
So personal. Yeah. When you start the business and it's something that you kind of put the first stone for into the ground, it feels like it oftentimes becomes one with your identity. And we need a whole other podcast to talk about.
That's a whole other, there's
Yeah,
cocktails involved in that one. And
exactly. Fundamental health is a whole other thing. Again, always, if you can always be committed to the problem, the how is going to continue to evolve and change. And sometimes it feels like, hey, we've invested so much into this solution, if you may, this assertion. But what the market is now telling me is that this is not the right answer. And earlier I felt, oh, that means we're solving the wrong problem. But what I have
right.
learned since is if you believe you're solving the right problem, your answer might have to change.
That is, you said many pieces of advice over the years that I take to heart. And that's the best one. I really think like it is because you're exemplifying, you've been committed to this mission the entire time. And it's okay if the solution itself changes a little bit because you're committed to fixing the problem. Thank you. That's a good nugget right there for everyone. So, a couple last few questions here before we get to
Mhm.
the world's best and hardest question. What would you say you're most proud of? And what do you hope for the future?
Ah, so many things with everything at a human level, with everything that's going on right now with climate change, with kind of global tensions, now trade wars. I just hope that we can leave a better place for our children than we found it. And it just doesn't feel like it's going in that direction at the moment. So I just hope that the world starts to stabilize a little bit. And I know we don't fully control that, but I mean, at the highest level, that's what I hope for. And my one small part in that, what I can control is, creating local economies, helping emerging food and beverage brands. So, did you know that 90% of emerging brands will fail for a variety of reasons: product market fit, lack of access to capital, access to retail opportunities, so on and so forth. So, maybe I cannot control which country goes to war with which country, but maybe what I can control is helping the 10 big breakthrough brands from your city and my city actually be successful and have the ability to build sustainable long-term businesses.
Yeah, and have a seat at the table because that's
And have
where
it,
we all like to be for food.
yeah, for sure. Truly have a seat at the table, right? I mean, when you build these emerging brands and they have a voice, I think they have something very interesting to say. And small businesses, these are the brands that create jobs. And honestly, to me, these are the brands that are bringing innovation into food and bev. And that's
100%.
exciting.
Yeah, it's something new. And sometimes that something new is going back to what worked way beyond, way a long time ago when we weren't processing things as much
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
going back to real ingredients.
Yeah. And that actually also goes back to local a little bit. You don't need to
Yeah.
add so many preservatives to make it so shelf stable that it can travel the world.
100%. So, what's your one piece of advice for someone who would like to become an entrepreneur and start something on their own?
Oh my God. I would say do your homework, build the blueprint and build the company before you build the company.
Mm.
Build your network of advisors, build your network of investors if you have them, but that's hard. Maybe even have your first customer lined up before you truly go into it head first. And especially like I was a late stage entrepreneur. I quit a job to figure out what I wanted to do to start the journey. I think there's some parallel tracking that can truly happen. And no matter where you are in the country, there are so many resources for free that are available, right? Whether it's ecosystems like Sarah and I were talking about at the beginning of this session, or online courses or forums, find them, connect with them, learn from them before you make the mistakes yourself. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to make the mistakes, but there are a lot you can mitigate if you do your homework.
Do your research.
Do your research and access. There are so many free resources available to entrepreneurs, everything from like AWS to CRM solutions, so like platforms to networks to advisors to like co-working spaces. Connect all the dots, be super, super frugal, even if you have access to capital. Because I mean, take it from me, you will go through so many pivots that you will need the staying power. Very few people get it right the first time. Usually it's iteration 9 or 10. So you need the staying power to actually get the iteration 9 or 10.
I love that. It's keep your runway
Yeah.
long as you can, and keep your soul and your energy long because this is a marathon. It's not a
Yeah.
sprint, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised when people are like, I'm giving this 2 years and then I'll see what happens. Like, what? Nothing happens in 2 years. To be honest, again, there are a few companies that right place, right time, but those are the anomalies and not really what generally happens.
Yes. And for the long haul, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Disha. So here we are. So on this podcast, it's not only called The Perfect Bite because it's a bit of a perfect bite of my career to date, from journalist and editor to entrepreneur myself and then working with folks in food and bev, but it's because each of us has our own perfect bite. We each have our own unique tastes and our own moments in life where food played a really special moment. And it's just our own, it's our own perfect bite. So, Disha Gulati, what is your perfect bite?
For me, it's going back to my dad and his home cooking. For me, it's an Indian food that my dad made often on Sundays, which was called chana bhatura, which is chickpeas and this big deep fried doughy bread. It just brings back so many memories. And I've had bhaturas like all over the world, many places in India. I think my dad makes it the best. And what is uncanny is now my 5 year old's favorite thing in the world is a chana bhatura. Even though my dad lives in India, he's never tried my dad's chana bhatura, but he came to it all by himself. And it's just so interesting to watch. And it truly has now become the perfect bite for our household.
I'm telling you, everyone always makes me cry with these. They're so
So
special. It's in the DNA. It is truly
yeah,
generational.
yeah.
Oh, that was a good one. Thank you.
Yeah. Just so you know, his number two is butter pasta. So I'm just so glad.
That's every 5-year-old. Thank God.
I'm just so glad that a butter is a big butter pasta because I was like, you can't be my son if your like number one thing is butter pasta.
We'd have to have a real serious
Yes.
conversation with
You
V
would need
here.
a sit down from mom for sure.
Oh, Tisha, this was so much fun. Thank you. This was so amazing. I'm so glad everyone got to hear the story that I have loved so much and your advice here. Can you let folks know where to find you and hear your market? So list the social accounts, the website, and anywhere else that we can find these amazing products.
Yes. Here'sYourMarket.com. We're doing weekly drops of new products, so come and check us out. You can also find us on Instagram. It's MKT. On Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn, Disha Gulati, or on Instagram. I'm more responsive on LinkedIn, but I'm Shy Town Disha on Instagram. Sarah, thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor. You have truly created the perfect pod, and I just loved going down memory lane with you today.
Cool. Me too. Mm. Thanks again, Disha. And everyone, this was Disha Gulati's Perfect Bite. Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media at Perfect Bite Pod. Now go get something good to eat.